The problem with gravel bikes is that, generally speaking, they're a little more expensive than a comparable mountain bike, at least in the affordable space. Let me explain where the differences are. It's been a while since I've opened the shop and stacked all the bikes. Usually Arman does it, but they're buying bearings, so they're gonna be late. Gravel components tend to be more expensive than mountain bike components. Usually, although the gap is shrinking. So here is my budget gravel group set suggestion. So I've been testing out a gravel group set on my Surly Midnight Special, and I think it's the best affordable budget gravel group set. Let me talk about the parts. So I've got the L2 GR7 shifters paired with a GR7 rear derailleur with an Evosid 40-tooth chainring, Evosid cranks, ZTTO 10-speed 1150 cassette with the Juin F1 cable actuated brake calipers. I'm going to talk about each component separately, but I'm assuming you're clicking on this video because you want to know the cost. So here's the breakdown. 3,756 pesos for the L2 GR7 shifters and rear derailleur. 2,700 for the Evosid 40-tooth chainring, Evosid crank, and BB. Although, if you can spend a little bit more, I would suggest you just get a regular Shimano BB and skip the Evosid BB. I'll talk about that more later on in the video. The ZTTO 10-speed 1150 cassette is 1,479. Then we paired it with a Shimano chain, 1110 9-speed chain, CNL G500, it's 890 pesos. And the most expensive part of the build is the Juin F1 cable actuated hydraulic brake calipers. If you add it all up, that's 16,325 pesos. I'll talk about some alternatives later on in the video, but let me go through each individual part and why I think it's good and why there might be some downsides to each part. Alright, let's start with the most expensive part of the build, the Juin F1 brake calipers. At 7,500, it is about half of the cost of the whole group set, and I think it's the part that is the most worthwhile. I suspect that I will be keeping that same pair of brake calipers for a long time, and anytime I want to put together a mechanical brake bike, I will be using those brake calipers. They are built like a tank. I think it's really important, especially here in Cebu, because we have a lot of steep hills, which also means we have a lot of steep downhills. And braking power is very important. You can get by with mechanical brakes, but it makes the experience not as enjoyable and slightly sketchier. With pure mechanical brakes, you'll probably be braking from the very top of the climb all the way down to the bottom, and honestly, I got used to my hydraulic brakes on my Shimano GRX, where you go down the climb at speed and then at the curve or near the bottom, that's when you brake. If you try to do that with not so great mechanical calipers, it can get you in trouble. Sometimes when it's going too fast, it just doesn't stop. So in terms of stopping power, they are very much like normal gravel hydraulic brakes, but they do feel like mechanical brakes. With hydraulic brakes, when you press on it a little bit, you can already feel the brake slowly catching onto the rotor, so there's more modulation. With the Juin, it still feels like mechanical brakes, wherein you press a little bit, nothing's really happening, and then you get to a certain point when you press some more where all of a sudden all that braking power hits you. I don't mind it, especially for the price, because what's important to me is the braking power. I suspect if you use like high-end cables, like compressionless cables, like a Jaguar thing, it might feel better. But with this Surly, I wanted to get the the affordable gravel group set experience. For an even more budget alternative, I tried speccing one of our bikes with a Shimano BRRS 305 flat mount brake caliper. Now, caveat, I have not tried it myself, but it does have a Shimano name on it. So generally, Shimano, they make good stuff. And the mechanics looked at it and they thought it was a lot better than all the normal mechanical brake calipers out there, all the other China brands at that price range. We got it for 3,103 pesos. I guess if you are at a budget, that might be the brake caliper worth trying. I should note that another difference between gravel and mountain bike is that the gravel bike frames tend to need flat mount brake calipers, and there seems to be less budget good flat mount brake calipers. And if you want to get like the hydraulic version, like a GRX version, the shifters and calipers will set you back quite a bit. That's where mountain bike has a big advantage. Like you could get Shimano MT200s. I think you can get the left and right for about 2,000 pesos. And that's already hydraulic. So that's where the big price discrepancy is. That's on the brakes. And you're on a bike, the brakes are pretty important. So if you're on a budget and you can swing the Juin Tech, I would go for the Juin Tech. If not, it seems like these Shimano ones are pretty good. Before I get to the biggest part of the group set, the L2 GR7, I want to take this time to talk about this video sponsor, Curve Coffee Collaborators. If you've ever visited the shop, you've likely tried the no boring coffee cold brew. For the cold brew, I use Curve Coffee Collaborators Cold Brew Blend. This was specifically made to cater to cold brew lovers. I use it with a toddy cold brew system, and it's the easiest way to make cold brew. In terms of my recipe, I don't do anything fancy, just 400 grams of coffee with 2,000 grams of water, steep it for 18 hours, and voila! I've got my cold brew concentrate, which I use to make all my coffee in the shop. If you are a home brewer or even a small business like mine, Curve's Cold Brew Blend paired with Toddy's cold brew system will allow you to easily make delicious coffee for your customers. Check out curve.coffee to learn more. Thanks Curve for sponsoring the vlog. Okay, next part of the group set I will be talking about will be the L2 GR7 shifters and rear derailleur. First, the good things. Obviously the price, the shifters and rear derailleur total less than 4,000 pesos, so they are worth a lot more than 4,000 pesos. Like the shifting is pretty good. It's not quite Shimano. The Shimano shifting feels smooth and fast. This one feels a little clunky where you can kind of feel it. You know, you can hear the chain go clunk, you know, clunk, or whatever sound it makes. And then when you shift to a smaller cog, it's actually really nice. Shifting to a smaller cog is really intuitive and fast and really nice. But when you shift to a bigger cog, the shifting motion does feel significantly harder to do than on a similar Shimano setup. On my Focus, I even have the Shimano shifters paired with an L2 RD rear derailleur, and prior I had the GRX rear derailleur and the shifting was softer, and now with L2 GR9 it's an 11 speed. The shifting is a little bit more firm, a little bit harder to go to that bigger cog. But it's not a big issue to me. It's fine, especially since one of the good things about this budget gravel group set is that it can fit a 50-tooth cassette. The first GRX iterations, they came out and I think Shimano suggested a max of 34. And you could kind of put a 40 or a 42 in the back and it still would shift fine. But honestly, with a lot of the really steep off-road stuff, you want a big cassette in the back. So if you notice on the Surly, I have an 1150 with a 40 tooth on the front and the 11 in the back. Still means I can go relatively fast on a road ride. Although I won't be bombing any hills or anything. with that ratio. But with the 40 in the front and the 50 in the back, that's a good chunk of climbing gears. And you could even just change your front chainring to a 38, 36, even a 34 if you want to. If you wanted even more climbing gears, if you just cared all about the ease of climbing up mountains, then you could do that. So big advantage L2GR7 or the L2GR series for having a 50 tooth cassette max. Also, the mechanics, they seem to like the rear derailleur. There were old L2 rear derailleurs that they did not like. I think it was made of steel, so it was heavy and it would rust. And these GR7s, they seem to like it quite a bit. So that's always good from a mechanics point of view. Now let's talk a little bit more about the bad stuff. Now I already mentioned that shifting to a bigger cog is a little bit harder to do. And the hoods are probably not as comfortable as a Shimano hood, like when you're on the hoods. The hoods itself actually are not bad. Might be a little bit harder than a Shimano hood. But to me, my big criticism about it is that the way you put your thumb on the hoods, it kind of nestles on the downshifter. Now on the road, that's not a big deal, but when I go through some off-road bits, like a downhill off-road rocky bit where it's really like shaking the whole bike, you can feel that button touching your thumb over and over and over again, and it can get a little bit annoying. And I can imagine if I was doing like a 3 hours of just gravel, of just off-road, it could irritate my thumb a little bit. Although I really like it because the thumb shifter, this new design is you could go on the drops and still shift, and that's a big one to me. So small minor thing that doesn't bother me that much. Anyway, if I'm going down a steep off-road descent, I should be on the drops and not on the hoods. But yeah, something to think about. Also, some people may want a 2x for their gravel group set. Admittedly, I am a 1x convert, but if I only had one bike, I may opt for a 2x. You could do a 2x with the L2GR7. A friend of mine, Enzo, he is running the road shifters with the road FD and the gravel RD in the back, and he hasn't had any complaints about that, I think. Now for alternatives, just to timestamp this video, I'm making this in August 2025, and I have not seen the Shimano Q's mechanical pricing just yet, but I suspect that they are still going to be more expensive than this version of L2. So I suspect it's still going to be more expensive. The other alternative that I really quite like is the Microshift Sword. Now, I believe the Microshift Sword is about 20,000 pesos. But it does include the crank, shifters, RD, and cassette. Does not include the brake calipers. So if you want to spend a little bit more, the Microshift one looks really good. I've tried it as well and I've been pretty impressed. Next is the Evosid chainring and crankset. The crankset has been pretty good in all honesty. It's very affordable, and when you buy it online, it comes in a variety of sizes and even two colors. There's a silver and a black, and you can choose between 165 crank length all the way up to 175. Especially for us, we've been running 165s. It's also very easy to find a variety of chain rings for it. On my Surly, I have the Evosid chainring. On my Focus, I also had the Evosid chainring, but the Focus did a lot more kilometers than my Surly, and I noticed that the chainring wore out surprisingly fast. On my Surly, not as big a deal because my mileage on the Surly is not that as big. There's just less revolutions. Is that the word? I'm still okay with it, but if it does wear out, I might look at something like a Pass Quest. It's a little bit more expensive, but it seems to be a bit more robust. And the Evosid chainring is surprisingly light as well. One thing to note with the Evosid crankset though, some of us have experienced some clicking and Sometimes you just need to tighten the crankset a little bit more. I think I did that with the first few rides on my Surly, but after that, no issues whatsoever. I did have an issue on my Focus, which was using the Evosid bottom bracket. I did the Audax and it was raining at some point, and a lot of water and gunk went into the bottom bracket area, and it seems like the weather sealing of the Evosid bottom bracket isn't that great. So it's a good idea to just use a Shimano bottom bracket if you can do that. One other thing, the Evosid bottom bracket, when you buy it, there's no grease in it, so make sure to open it up and put some grease in. Next up is the ZTTO 10-speed 1150 cassette. I don't have much to say except that it's cheaper than Shimano, and I think it weighs less than Shimano as well. The shifting is fine. The shifting is really good, to be honest. I mean, I like ZTTO because for the most part, it has been very consistent with me in general. So I think most of my affordable cassettes, I will be just getting a ZTTO one. It's very easy to find the exact cassette you need. They have an 8-speed one all the way to 12-speed. They have 11, I don't know, 28, 24 probably, and then all the way up to 1150. So you have a lot of options with the ZTTO cassette. And based on my experience, it shifts fine, especially with the Shimano or KMC chains. Lastly, the Shimano chain, because it works. That's the nice thing with Shimano. Generally, when you have a product with their name on it, it just works. I don't think I'll be upgrading anything on the Groupset on the Surly anytime soon. That whole setup just works. And the L2 doesn't seem that much heavier than its Shimano counterparts. And the Evosid crankset is I think lighter than a lot of the Shimano cranksets as well. And the ZTTO cassette is definitely lighter than the Shimano alternatives. So there's no reason for me to upgrade. That's my budget gravel group set. I think if I were to upgrade, I would be looking at one or two things. It would be hydraulic brakes. So obviously, I would change a whole bunch of things on the group set if I wanted hydraulic brakes, but that would make the price shoot up. Or I would get electronic shifting, which will also mean I have to change a whole bunch of things, and that would make the price shoot up as well. But for an affordable gravel group set, I think I will be keeping this whole setup for a long time, it seems. Because it brakes fine, it shifts fine, it has the range that I need. What more can I ask for? Alright, that's the video. I hope this was helpful to you. If you have any suggestions for gravel budget group sets or gravel budget components, let me know in the comments. I would like to read them. Ciao, bye. More videos soon.